everyone, welcome back. I have a bunch of holiday gift ideas for you today. I made this same video last year and I thought it would be fun to do it again this year, but with completely different ideas. Everything I'm going to show you can be done in, I would say, around 1 to 2 hours. One of the items that I'll show you later took around 4 hours to make, which is still not that bad compared to some crochet projects, but it's just because the yarn is a little bit thinner. And there's a little something in here for everybody, no matter who you're giving this to, whether they're related to you, no matter their gender, no matter their aesthetic preferences. I think that's all I have to say. So let me show you the first thing, which is these scrunchies. Now I'm calling this the ripple scrunchie because it looks like a bunch of little ripples. This one I made pink without trim, but this one is navy with white trim. I just added a slip stitch along the very edge if you wanted to do something like this. But these are adorable. I love how this looks in short hair. I recently cut my hair, which I regret. I'm not going to talk about it, but when I put it in a bun or a ponytail, I feel like it's just so small and there's not like enough volume for it to like be something, you know? But this, once you wrap it around a few times, it makes up for the lack of hair back there. I think these are cute with short hair. I also think it's cool with long hair because your hair gets like wrapped and twisted around if you did a bun with these. But yeah, you could make these in any color. I used a normal size hair tie like this one, but if you wanted to use a smaller hair tie for like little pigtails, or yeah, if you're giving this to like a kid or something, you could use a little hair tie and maybe a few less rows than I do. But these are probably the quickest thing I'm going to show you, so that's why I'm starting with them first. And I feel like anyone with hair would love these. So let me show you how to make them. To make the scrunchie, you will need a hair tie, a 5mm hook, and then regular weight 4 yarn. This is really simple. You start by making a slip knot and putting that on your hook. And then you're going to do single crochets all the way around the hair tie. So I'm working underneath, pulling up a loop, and then pulling through 2. Again, it's just a single crochet, except instead of inserting your hook into the chains and like working into the stitches below, we're just going underneath the hair tie. So hook goes under, pull up a loop, and pull through all the loops on your hook. And you want to do this all the way around. I'll show you once I get closer to finishing, but you want to make sure that these are really condensed, because as you pull the hair tie around your hair, you're going to start to see, especially if you're using a lighter color yarn like I am, you're going to see the hair tie underneath. So as you're working, pull really tight all of these stitches together so that they condense like that, and then there's no space in between it, or less space in between it when you pull. And it helps while you're working to hold this side and the other side, so you just have like a loop and it's not like flopping around everywhere. So I've gotten kind of all the way around, but I'm gonna make sure these are condensed. And now you can tell I have room for a few more once I did that, so keep pulling them back. Then once you feel like you can't do any more stitches, without it being twisted, you wanna make sure that this is all straight and not like twist it through itself. You're going to slip stitch it back to the first stitch that we made. And this closes the round. So now we have row 1. Row 2, from here on out, the pattern is going to be basically the same. You're doing the same thing over and over. And every single stitch is going to be an increase, and we're doing double crochet. So every single stitch will have 2 double crochets in it. So I'm going to chain 2 to give my row some height, and then double crochet into that first stitch twice. Same thing in the next stitch. 2 double crochet. Something to note with this is, like, since we pulled our stitches really condensed, it's kind of like hard to get your hook in here or even see where your next stitch is because they're all like on top of each other. So as I work, I'll like pull the elastic a little bit just to see where that space I'm supposed to work into is, and then you don't get as confused. So I'll come back once I work 2 double crochets in every stitch all the way around. Okay, I worked increases in every stitch all the way around, and now that I'm back where I started, I'm going to find the top of that chain 2 that I did and slip stitch to it. Then, you guessed it, chain 2 and double crochet twice in every stitch. So we're doing the exact same thing again. It's just making the row double each time so that it has no choice but to curl and wave up like this. So I will be back when I finish increases in every stitch all the way around. I made my way around town, and now I'm just going to slip stitch it back to that first stitch that we did, and then chain and pull my yarn through to tie it off. And now you have a super cool scrunchie. You do have the option, if you so please, to add trim to it. This literally has my hair in it, so sorry. I guess that's kind of the point, is it goes in your hair, so your hair is going to get in there. But you can add trim on the outside in a different color, and I think it looks really cool once it's like wrapped in your hair, because you like, especially, ooh, that's cool, when you see just like the little stitching effect that it gives underneath. I don't know, it just looks cute in your hair. It almost turns into like those crocheted roses that are like pretty popular, or were popular, I don't know anymore, but it just looks cuter with the trim. For this one I just did slip stitches, which give this effect where like one side you can see those V's and then the other side looks like it's stitched or something. Okay, the next thing that probably takes the same amount as those scrunchies are these little bubble wristlet keychains. These use Tunisian crochet, which I recently learned, I don't know, maybe a month ago, and I actually really love it. I feel like it's a lot more fun and enjoyable than normal crochet, because you do like forward passes and return passes, and you can do like all the stitches at the same time instead of like stitch by stitch by stitch. This idea kind of came to be because in my holiday guide last year, I made these granny square like little AirPod cases, and they kind of clipped onto your bag. And I had a bunch of these laying around, and I was like, oh, it'd be cool if I'd made like a little wristlet or something to hold your keys or to attach onto your bag. So I started working Tunisian crochet like in this pattern, and it was maybe that wide. And the way I was crocheting it with like whatever my hook and yarn size was, it was starting to curl up on itself, which turned into a happy accident because I ended up just like sewing it together anyways to create like the circle donut look. I clipped this onto my bag like on the side of it, and I think it adds like a cute pop of color. I feel like this would be a good gift for maybe someone who just got their license, or maybe if you're like a college student and you have an ID, or even if you like work at a company that has those badges where you always have to like scan your ID to get into buildings and stuff. This would be a great idea. I am neither of those people. I just think it looks cute on my bag, but I think that's also a valid reason. Here's how to make the bubble keychain wristlet. For the keychain wristlet, I'm using a 5.5mm hook, weight 4 yarn, and then you'll also need some kind of keychain ring. This is more like a carabiner style, I guess. It's a little easier to clip on a bag compared to the ones that are, you have to like spiral twist on, like the ones your keys come on. Either way, you're gonna need some kind of key ring because we're gonna connect it first thing. So I'm starting with a slip knot and throwing that on my hook. And then you want to take the ring. Obviously, I'm not going to work over the part that opens. I'll go over here. And I'm just taking my hook underneath before I yarn over so that it loops underneath. I'm just going to do single crochets. I'm inserting my hook under the ring and pulling up a loop, yarning over, and pulling through 2. So when you do that, because you're working around such a thick base, you want to make sure you're tightening it around these loops that are directly around the metal part, because you don't want it so loose where it slides around and could potentially slide off if this is open. This row is going to have 6 single crochets, so just keep working until you have 6. Once you do 6 single crochets, turn your work, and this is going to be Tunisian crochet. If you get the hang of normal crochet, you can do this, so don't be scared. Into these V's, I'm going to be working into only the front loop. So I'll show you with this yarn needle. Normally we would pick up both parts of the V, but I'm going to pick up the loop that's towards me. So if it's up this way, I would only be working into this front loop and not the back loop. So with my loop back on my hook, I go into that first stitch, and I'm going to go from the bottom and just push up through the center of that V. Again, only picking up that front loop. I'm yarning over and pulling up a loop. Again, into the second stitch, inserting it in the front here from underneath and pushing it up through the center of that V, yarning over and pulling up a loop. So now I have 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to do that all the way down. Again, finding the next V, inserting my hook in from the side and up through the center. I'm not grabbing that back loop, only the front loop, and pulling up a loop. 2 more, actually 3 more. You're going to go all the way to the end, even into that last stitch. That one was really hard. But it'll be easy from here on out. Okay, now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 loops on your hook. The first thing we're going to do is yarn over and only pull through one of the loops on your hook. That is kind of like a turning chain. Like if you did a normal row of single crochet, you would chain 1 and then continue going back the other way. From here on out, we're going to pull through 2 loops every time. So I just yarned over and pulled through 1. Then from here on out, I'm pulling through 2. So I yarn over, pull through 2. Again, yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through 2. All the way down until you just have 1 loop on your hook, like this. And now you have your first row of Tunisian crochet. Something to notice here is we have these vertical bars that are showing up. I zoomed in a little closer so you can see better. But here we have these vertical bars. If I take this yarn needle through them all, you can kind of see it better. But this is where we're going to be working our stitches. This first one here, we're going to ignore that. Every time we start a new row or forward pass, we're going into that second vertical bar. So I'll pull it up here so you can see. This would be the 3rd, the 4th, and so on. So again, skipping the first one into the second one, I'm inserting my hook, yarning over, and pulling up a loop. And don't like make this too tight to where your hook is like sitting at the front of your work. You want to pull it so that your hook is above your work, so it's slightly loose. Next one, I'm inserting my hook into that vertical bar, yarning over and pulling up a loop. And you're doing this all the way down, except for the last stitch of the row, which I'll show you. So now, at the very end, there's not a super clear vertical bar to work into. This was the last one we worked into. But if you turn your work to the side a little bit, it's kind of hard to tell on the first row, but there is like a little V starting to form here with a front and a back. And we want to insert our hook into both of those parts of the V. So I'm not just grabbing this front loop as if it were a vertical bar. I'm grabbing the front loop and the back loop and pulling through there. I'll show you again on the next row because it'll be a little clearer. So I'm turning my work to the side a little bit, going through that little V, yarning over and pulling up a loop. And that, whoops, sorry, this yarn splits a little. So that would be your forward pass, and on the return pass, same thing we did before. The first one is just going to be yarning over and pulling through 1 loop as our metaphorical turning chain, even though we're not turning anything. And then from here on out, I'm yarning over and pulling through 2. Pull through 2, pull through 2, all the way down. And you just repeat that over and over and over. So I'll show you one more time if you're a little confused. I'm skipping this first vertical bar because that's considered my first stitch already, and only going into the second one here. Pulling up a loop all the way down through those bars. And now I worked in as many as I could, and I'm at the very end. I turn my work to the side a little bit, and you can see here that there is a little V. I insert my hook in that and pull up a loop. And then return pass, first time we pull through 1, the rest we pull through 2 all the way down. And there you can see the pattern forming. It kind of creates like a waffly stitch look. You want to continue this pattern of forward passes and return passes until you get enough that it can loop around and reconnect to the chain or like the key ring with your wrist being able to fit through. So as you keep working, connect the end of it back around here and see if your hand can fit through it, because everyone has a different size hand. This one fits comfortably around mine, but maybe you have a smaller hand or a bigger hand. So keep working. Once I finish this, I'll let you know how long mine is in inches or centimeters if you want it to be exactly the same. But as long as you finish your work with a return pass, it doesn't matter how long it is. From the keychain, it's like a little over 10 inches or 26 centimeters roughly. Again, it doesn't have to be exact, but maybe get in that range. So the next step is to connect the end of our work back to the keychain so that it loops. I'm gonna finish off this row and then use a yarn needle to connect it. To cast off your last row, you insert your hook into that bar and pull up a loop so that now you have 2 loops on your hook. And instead of going all the way down, we're like essentially slip stitching. I'm just pulling the first loop through the second loop. And you're gonna continue that all the way down. So insert my hook into that bar and pull up a loop and then pull that loop through the one that was already on your hook. Continuing that all the way down. And it should look like that. I'm gonna leave a tail that's maybe like 2 feet long, just because I'm always scared that I'm gonna run out of yarn. But you want a decently long tail, and then you're just gonna pull it through here to tie it off, and then we're gonna use that tail to sew it. Actually, wait, I made this way too long. I don't need all this. Now, grab a yarn needle and attach it to your yarn, your tail. And you'll see it naturally kind of wants to curl in this way, so that waffly texture is on the outside. So you want to make sure that when you're folding it over and connecting it here, that waffly texture is on the outside and not this way. So I'm lining up the edges, and on this side, when we first started, we only worked through the front parts of that chain, which leaves us the back part of the chain to work into now. The row that's directly touching these parts that are connected to the metal, right here, it's like a little row of twists almost, it looks like, but there's 6 little bumps. That's the back of that chain that we initially worked into. So this is where we're going to be working our stitches. So I'm grabbing that first loop and inserting it into both parts of this V up here. And again, coming from down here, I'm grabbing that back part of that chain and going through both parts of the V. Grabbing another part of that loop and the V's. And you want this to be like kind of snug, because if there's tension on this, it's gonna pull the pieces apart slightly. And just go all the way down. And then you get a clean connection on both sides. Now with our yarn still attached, I want you to separate these pieces and start to create the loop. So where my yarn is connected, I'll start there. So I spread the loop open, and on both sides we have V's, thankfully. So here you can see V, 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 and here you can see V, 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 V. Now this might get a little confusing. If it's confusing, ignore what I'm saying. I want to grab to like kind of curl it in on itself and tuck it under the outside of this V. So this part that's closest to me here. And then on this side, I would grab the part that's closest to the outside. So I would grab this part so that the parts of the V that are closest to the inside get tucked in and curled under. If that makes no sense, then put it through both V's just like this. I feel like it looks a little cleaner if you do it into the outside parts of the V. And I'm just whip stitching, or whatever this is called, all the way down. I got a little closer so that maybe you can see what I mean by the outside parts of the V. Once you work all the way around, then you're just going to tie off your yarn, and that's it. I just have a few more, and I'll show you just at the end too, to make sure it's fully closed. You kind of have to work a few extra. So this is technically the last chains that are available, but you'll see that this part is still kind of open here, like I could stick something in it. So you want to find where you started, and I'm going to take that like hole and just find both sides of it and just connect it as my last stitch. It kind of completes the loop, and then it should look like this. So this side you can kind of see that seam a little, which I think is cool, and then it's just a squishy bubbly keychain, and it's comfortable and cute. I think it's so adorable. I'm gonna tie my tail from the very beginning in a knot with this, just so that it's extra secure, and then tuck in the ends, weave them in. On the Tunisian crochet note, I also learned how to do this stitch that looks like knitting. I feel like a fraud, but I'm not a knitter. I've tried learning like 5 separate times and I just fail every time. So if you're someone who's always wanted to get that knit look but just can't get the hang of knitting, this is like a perfect substitute for it. This winter headband I made is made from, I forget exactly what it's called, maybe Tunisian knit stitch. And I learned from a tutorial on YouTube, which I'll link in the description. She is super helpful and everything makes sense and is clear to follow. But for this headband, I started with a chain of 9, and then I just did that Tunisian knit stitch all the way around until it fit around my head, and then I just connected it, I connected it here. Once I cast off my yarn, I just whip stitched this together. And this is a weight 4 yarn with mohair worked into it, and then I took a board bristle brush and just brushed it out so that it looks fuzzier. Again, super easy. I feel like this one doesn't really need a tutorial as long as you learn how to do the stitch. It's literally a rectangle. Great for winter. Anyone could use one of these. Yeah, moving on. I almost didn't include this next one because it felt like a cop-out, but I like want to explain myself because I have an idea. These are granny square coasters. And by a granny square coaster, I mean it's just a granny square that I'm setting on a table and putting a drink on. I'm turning it into a coaster. It's just a granny square. I made one that's this dark and light blue, pink and red, and then green and yellow. And my idea for this was like, yeah, it's cool if you just give someone one of these and they can use it in their home or wherever. But I was picturing this more as like a set that you would include in addition to like someone's main gift. Imagine you're giving a gift to someone, you have a beautiful gift box or gift bag that's wrapped. Maybe there's a ribbon on it. And I was picturing all of these being tied in the corner with a ribbon and like attached to the side of the gift bag as like a secondary gift, or sitting on like a gift box. I feel like it would add another layer to your gift and to your packaging or wrapping. And I think they're cute and practical, except I would give them at least 4. I only made 3 here, but I feel like a set of 4 makes more sense. The good thing about these is on like a coaster like this, which is like a tile, if your drink is condensating and like dripping all over the coaster, this one, it just like sits in a puddle of water. And when I pick my cup up and drink it, it's covered in condensation still and it's like dripping all over me. But with these, because they're made out of yarn, they're like relatively absorbent. It will actually soak up the water or the condensation. So then when you go to take a drink, it's not like pouring everywhere and it doesn't leave a puddle on your desk. I don't know. I've been using a granny square coaster at my desk while I work for at least a year and I love it. I'm never going back. My only tip is just don't use a thick yarn. This is a weight 4. I would not go thicker than this because your drink starts to wobble a little bit if it's too squishy. I will have a good granny square tutorial linked in the description. I feel like a lot of people already know how to do granny squares, so follow the tutorial if you're unfamiliar. Otherwise, you know what to do. Next gift idea is a striped mohair hat. I made this one recently that I'm obsessed with. It kind of reminds me of, if you've seen Cheaper by the Dozen, when I wear this I feel like Sarah Baker. She always wears like, they look like handmade beanies. This hat is made out of this drops brushed alpaca silk yarn. And they recommend using a 5mm hook with this because it's pretty fuzzy, but I actually used a 4mm hook because I wanted it to be a little tighter. I was gonna say tighter knit, but it's not knit. Tighter like crocheted, so there's less holes and it's warmer. Now I have an easy ribbed beanie tutorial up on YouTube. It's kind of similar in construction to that. However, it's not ribbed, as you can probably tell. And the way that I made the hat in that tutorial is more similar to this one, which I made a while ago, but I call this my circus hat because every time I wear it, everyone's like, what is that? But I like it, so who cares? The way that I constructed the hat in that tutorial is by creating rows this way and working around my head. So the initial chain was like the height of the hat, and I worked around. But in order to get the stripes to be horizontal, my initial chain was around my head this way, and then I worked the rows up vertically. Basically, you just crochet a rectangle. Obviously, my rectangle was striped. That fits around your head, which mine was roughly 21 inches wide or 54 centimeters. I wrote down the dimensions if you want it to be exact. And then I worked my rows up until I had enough to create this fold. And then it also reached the crown of my head. And that was roughly 12 inches or 31 centimeters tall. That's including the fold, so this was 12 inches. And then you sew the shorter edges of the rectangle together so that it creates a continuous loop. And then you weave some yarn in and out of the top and pull it tight to cinch the top. If you want a little guidance on that, I would watch my ribbed beanie tutorial, but if that makes sense, then that makes sense. But yeah, this is a great gift for dads, brothers. Play with like fun color combos. You can make the stripes thicker or thinner if you wanted. And if you want to follow the dimensions and the construction, I'll have my easy ribbed beanie tutorial linked in the description. Last but not least is this bonnet or hood or like half balaclava, kind of, not really. I'm gonna call it a bonnet because I feel like that's closest to what it is. I feel like when I wear it with a jacket kind of like this, where it goes up to my chin, like where the bonnet ends, and you don't see where it's connected, it looks more like a hood. But if I have like my neck showing and then the bonnet and my shirt's like lower, then you can tell it's a bonnet. But this is what it looks like. I used a wool yarn so that this would be warm enough for winter. And I did do a ribbed effect on this bonnet, which I feel like adds some cool texture. And then also on the bottom, I made a pocket for this drawstring. Sorry, this is awkward. There, my hand's wearing it now. But that's just so you can see what it looks like. And this is a 2-color cord. I will show you how to do that in a tutorial in a second. This is a great gift for somebody. However, I also think if you wanted to just make this cord, it's so easy, especially if you have scrap yarn or leftover yarn that you kind of want to get rid of or you don't really know what to do with. This is a really great gift wrap substitute. If you don't have or don't want to buy a ribbon, you could wrap it around a present, you could tie it around any gift. I think it's so cute. And then also, last year, one of the items I made was little mohair bows. If you made these short enough, I think this would be cute if you used it as gift wrap, and then the person could also use it to tie like little bows in their hair as a ribbon. Even if you don't make the bonnet, I recommend skipping through this tutorial to find where I show you how to make this cord. But that aside, I think the bonnet is still a really great gift for anyone who's willing to step outside the beanie box a little bit. I feel like last year we saw it with balaclavas, and even now this year I think they're becoming a little more normalized. I made this adult size, I guess, my head size, but if you follow the same construction of it, but just make it to the measurement of a baby's head or a little kid's head, just imagine this on a little baby's head, like it would be so sweet. So I'm using this yarn called Stitch Please by Premier Yarns. It's weight 5 or bulky, and each skein has 120 yards. I will let you know how much I use at the end. And they recommend using a 6mm hook. I've also purchased weight 5 yarns that recommend closer to like an 8mm hook. If you're buying something similar, I would recommend looking at the hook size it recommends and try to get as close to a 6mm hook as you can. So I made a slip knot and I'm going to chain 34 chains. After 34 chains, I'm going to begin rows of just plain single crochet. So I'm going to chain 1 extra as a turning chain, insert my hook into the second stitch, and single crochet all the way down the row. So I finished my 34 single crochets all the way across. And from here on out, we're going to be doing back loop single crochets. So to turn, I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. And then into this single crochet, normally we would insert it into the side here, pulling up both parts of that V. But instead, I'm going to turn my row upwards insert my hook in the middle of the V and stick it through the back, so I'm only pulling up that back loop and finishing a single crochet like normal. And I'm going to do that all the way down my row. I tested this before with a lot thicker yarn, so I'm not sure how many rows I'm going to need to do yet before I start decreasing. You're going to continue this single crochet in the back loops only with chain 1 as our turning chains for however many total rows I put on the screen, and I will come back once I have that. Okay, I completed 20 rows and I also started my 21st row, and what's going to happen is this end is going to stay flat and we're going to start decreasing on this end only. So it's going to create a slant and it's going to kind of round the back. If you need to mark this side with a stitch marker, feel free to do so that you know every time I reach this end, I'm going to be decreasing. At the end of each row, I'm going to insert 1 decrease. So I'm going to continue my row 21 all the way until I have 3 stitches left. Once you have 3 stitches left, you can go ahead and insert a decrease. So I insert my hook and pull up a loop. Into the next stitch, I also insert my hook and pull up a loop. So I have 3 loops on my hook. I yarn over and I pull through 3. And that is 1 decrease. Then in the last stitch of that row, I just do 1 single crochet. Chain 1 as a turning chain and turn your work. And again, this is still our flat side from before. So the decrease is also going to happen on this side at the start of our row. So whenever I reach this side, I will finish a row with a decrease, chain 1, I will start a row with a decrease, continue like normal, chain 1, continue like normal, decrease, turn, decrease, continue. So it's always going to happen on this side. So now returning, I have that single crochet and that decrease. I always want my last stitch of the row to be a single crochet just because I think it looks a little cleaner. So the first thing I'm going to do is a single crochet. Then I'll work my decrease. So insert, pull up a loop, next stitch, insert, pull up a loop, pull through 3. And then I'm just going to continue back loop, single crochet all the way down. Also, I forgot to say this, but you watch me do it. Even the decreases will be in the back loops. So everything's in the back loop still of the single crochet so that it keeps that ribbing look. I've reached the end of that flat edge. Again, the decreases are over here, and I'm just doing a normal single crochet in the last stitch, chaining 1, turning, and continuing single crocheting in the back loops all the way down until I reach my decrease side. Now I'm back at my decrease side. Right now I have 3 stitches left in this row. So I'm going to do a decrease, insert my hook, pull up a loop, and then next stitch, insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 3. And that last stitch I'm just doing a single crochet. We're still at the decreased edge, so I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, single crochet, decrease, and continue single crochet all the way down. I'm going to continue this process of decreasing until I have 15 stitches left in my row. So we started with 34 and we're going to end with 15. So I have 15 stitches down here left in my row. I have a total of 35 rows. And I just want to explain this quickly before I do it, but we have just plain rows of single crochet, decreases. We're going to mirror the other side now as if we just flipped it like this. So now I have 15. I'm going to increase all the way up till 35 and then continue rows of single crochet so that I can just fold it in half and sew it along this seam. So since all of the decreases happened here and nothing happened on this side, we're going to follow the same rule with the increases. So only on the side that I have the decreases will I increase, and this side will continue to just be flat. So with that being said, I'm going to continue a row of single crochets all the way down, not increasing, not decreasing, just one row so that I can calibrate back to increasing on this side. So I will single crochet, chain 1, go all the way down, and then I'll start increasing. I just did that one row of single crochet and now I'm back on my flat side. So I'm going to work single crochet in the second to last stitch of this row, I'm going to do 2 single crochets, which is an increase, and then just 1 in that last stitch, keeping the consistency where the last stitch of every row here is a single crochet and not an increase or decrease. So I chained 1, single crocheting all the way down until I reach the last 2 stitches. I have 2 stitches left in my row. I'm going to do 2 single crochets into this second to last stitch, and then in the last stitch just 1 single crochet. I'm going to repeat that until I have 34 stitches in my row so that it mirrors this side exactly. So again, the pattern would be I just worked all the way across, increased, I'm going to turn my work, increase again, work like normal, chain, work like normal, increase, chain 1, turn my work, increase again, work down, nothing happens here, and I continue all the way until I have 34 stitches in total in my row. Okay, I finished that increase pattern, and now I have 34 stitches on this edge. And since before we started decreasing on this side, we first did 20 rows of plain single crochet, we're going to do the same thing on this side. So we finished increasing. The last thing I need to do is 20 rows of single crochet in the back loops. No increasing or decreasing. Okay, so this was where I started. I just finished this side of the 20 more rows of single crochet, which you can see here. The last step is to leave a longer tail, and I'm going to whip stitch this folded in half from the top all the way down to where this seam would end. To measure how long of a tail to leave, usually I'll do a little longer than 2 times the length that I'm going to be stitching. And I'm just attaching the yarn to my yarn needle. I'm going to fold this in half. If you want to, you could put some stitch markers where those rows without the increase or decrease end here so that you just make sure you're lining it up exactly. I forgot to do this, but at this last stitch you just worked, once you cut that tail, you can pull it through with the chain. And then we're going to use this tail. For this part, it doesn't necessarily matter like exactly where you're inserting the needle. You just want to make sure that it's going to be the same on both sides. So maybe it's easy to tell like with the rows, you're going to insert your needle like here through both sides. So it would look like that. And then once you get to the end, you obviously don't need to go down the part that's like connected down here, but you want to make sure that go all the way to the edge so that there's not a hole right there. And now technically this is going to be the wrong side, so you can go ahead and flip it so that the right side is facing out. And that's what it should look like once it's stitched together. And something I want to acknowledge is that this is kind of straight here, but once it's on your head, you can't tell at all. So don't freak out if you're wondering about that. What I'm going to do next is add some trim around the face. And then also it's still pretty short. It hits kind of like right where my jawline is. So I'm going to add kind of like a thicker band here that's going to have string attached to the end that we can tie into a little bow right here. Right side's facing out. I'm going to reattach my yarn right here and work around to frame the face. I'm making a slip knot and sticking it through first stitch of this part. I'm going to work single crochet, keeping it simple all the way around the face. And this time I'm working through the entire part of the stitch and I'm not doing back loop stitches anymore. So it's just a normal single crochet. Okay, I just worked into the last stitch right there. Next, we're going to go all the way along the bottom, and we want to make this a little bit thicker. So I'm going to work single crochet across and back, maybe 2 or 3 times, but I will let you know. Once I reach the part that's in line with the seam back here, I'm going to decrease twice, just so that it helps like pull it a little tighter to your neck. And then once I go back, I'll do the same thing. I'll decrease twice again. But in total, I did 4 rows of half double crochet in addition to that 1 row of single crochet that I did. Now we're going to turn it wrong side out, flip it inside out, and we're actually gonna sew this so that it creates a pocket and we can stick a cord through it. First thing you want to do is flip it wrong side out because we don't want that seam to be showing. I'm actually right at the end of my skein, which is like amazing timing. If you aren't towards the end of your skein, then I would do the same thing where you measure like twice the length of what we're sewing and then just leave a longer tail. So I have my long tail. I'm going to attach my yarn needle. So I'm going to fold it and connect some stitch markers just to keep it in place as I'm working. But you want to make sure you're connecting it kind of where those single crochets were. Now I'm going to go back in with my needle. And I don't know what this stitch is called. Sorry, I'm not a seamstress. I'm basically just going to be going like in and out and in and out like that. I just trimmed that tail and now I'm going to weave in those two ends. I'm going to flip it right side out. So let me show you how to make that cord. I found a yarn. I like these colors together. You want it to be as close of a weight to the yarn you were using as possible. I'm going to take them working together and create a slip knot. I'm using the same hook as before. And once you tighten it on your hook, you're going to pull one of the colors through the other one. So in this case, I'm going to pull the red through the white. So since the only color left on my hook is the red one, I'm gonna pull the white working yarn just to kind of get rid of it down here so that I have my tail, one color on my hook, and then I have two strands of working yarn. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is take whatever color is on my hook. So I have red on my hook. I'm gonna take it above and down and around my hook, anchoring it with my fingers here so it doesn't twist like that. And I'm going to pinch it with my pointer finger and my thumb. Then I'm going to take the white yarn and pull it through those two red loops. Then I'm going to do the same thing again. So I'm pinching it here. I'm pulling the yarn up, down, and around, pinching it between those two fingers, grabbing my red working yarn now and pulling that through those two white loops. Again, pinching it between my fingers, up, over, and around, pulling it to the side, grabbing the other color and pulling that through. And I'm just going to repeat this for a while until I get a cord that's long enough to fit through my hood and also enough tail that I can tie like a decent sized bow. Every once in a while I will stop and untwist my working yarn because otherwise it just gets to be a tangled mess. Okay, so this cord ended up around 45 inches. Oh, also I tied off the end like you would tie off normal crochet where you just like chain and then pull it through. So I have this larger stitch marker, but you could use a safety pin, a paper clip, a bobby pin even, just anything that's hard so you can feel it as you're feeding it in. I'm gonna attach it to one of the ends. This might actually be a little too big. Yeah, you're just gonna fish it through, making sure you're staying in the pocket, and just keep doing this until it's pulled all the way through. Pretty simple. And then you can unhook it and obviously pull it until it's even on both sides. And you're done. Those are all the gift ideas I have to show you for this year, but if you want more ideas, feel free to check out my video from last year and check the description for any links or tutorials that I mentioned. If you make anything I showed in this video, please tag me. Instagram at eliznuts, TikTok at eliznuts, or even DM it to me on Instagram if you don't want to post it. I think it's so cool when me talking to my camera translates into like you being able to create something in real life. I think that's awesome. And thank you all for your support and sticking around to the end of the video. I love you all with my whole heart. Happy holidays and happy crocheting.